Hello viewers, I hope you all had a happy Diwali and welcome back. Everybody had a small break from work. We all probably went home or met loved ones and had a great time eating sweets. Of course, there is this little matter of reversing the weight gain that will come in time, and I'm sure everybody has a very detailed plan of how you are going to accomplish that, keeping Christmas also in mind. We're going to have 4 different things that we're going to talk about today. And our guest today is Satish Sharma ji. Satish Sharma ji, welcome to PGurus channel.
Pranam Shayar ji, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to bringing you up to speed on some of the amazing festivities that we had over Diwali, some to do with firecrackers and others to do with political firecrackers. So yes, a lot to catch up on.
Yes, so we're going to pick up action from where we left off on our previous hangout, which was that there was some clarity question about whether the march of pro-Pak protesters was banned or was it being rerouted, and it appears that it was rerouted so that it would not go across the Indian High Commission, but there was a lot of stuff that happened there, and Satish ji, perhaps you could fill in on what happened.
Yeah, as you say, an awful lot happened, but I think in summary there were 2 or 3 points which are worth mentioning. One is that the Metropolitan Police, they decided that they could reroute the march and prevent any of the protesters from coming anywhere near the High Commission. And so that was what we'd always thought it would be a good idea. At the time, a lot of people were actually wanting for the march to be banned. But with the wisdom of hindsight, I think it's a really good thing that the march was allowed to go ahead. The High Commission was undisturbed. And one of the really positive benefits that has happened is that the march really showed a contrast between the Indian and Hindu community and the Pakistani protesters. One of the most amazing developments that I've just noticed watching social media is that a huge number of traditional British people were really very incensed and unhappy that the Diwali that they too have become used to celebrating, everybody joins in with a festival of light, and the theme of good conquering evil is a universal theme. So it's almost as though the British community, the indigenous community, felt a little offended that their opportunity to enjoy Diwali with the British Indian community, that had been tainted. And on the social media, you see so much criticism of it. And I think that's a really positive development. One thing I noticed also was that the British community, they have now connected that the Labour Party were actually supporting these unpleasant protesters who were interfering in otherwise completely happy and peaceful celebrations. And so we've noticed that there is a tranche of traditional British Labour voters who are now also incensed with the company that Jeremy Corbyn and today's Labour Party are keeping. So that was another benefit from the march going ahead.
Well, we're going to share a couple of videos with you. One is that of a white journalist, I think, commentator. I'm not 100% sure. I just saw this thing and I'm going to share that video with you. Her name is Katie Hopkins, and you can see in that video how she is being, basically booed and aggressively being, over shouted as she was trying to record her piece, and she was surrounded by a posse of men, loud, and they even had a speaker that was almost in your face. It was really, really shocking to see the kind of verbal aggression that was on display there. Satish ji, did you get a chance to look at that video? We're going to show that thing just now.
Cheap publicity.
We're talking. We're having a chat. Yes. We're talking. So what's your problem with Muslims?
No, you were going to listen, you said.
Well, we will talk.
Yes,
is this a conversation?
Yes, you also have to listen.
Okay, this is going to be a conversation.
So today is a religious festival for the Indian community, Diwali.
Right.
And I think personally It's really disrespectful that you're all gathered here on a religious
That's your
festival.
opinion?
Yes, exactly, my opinion.
We the
Because-
Muslims respect every human on the
Okay,
planet.
And so my opinion is we wouldn't do something like this on Eid because this would be disrespectful thing to do on Eid.
You are perfectly free to do that.
No, I wouldn't want to do that. So that's why I'm here, because I think it's
No problem, that's your opinion.
My opinion-
Is anyone disrespecting Hindus here? No.
Okay.
So she's lying.
No, that's unfair. That's unfair.
Okay.
I'm sharing my opinion.
Okay.
Well, just because you
That's
disagree
fine.
with me does not
That's
make
your
me a liar.
opinion.
No, listen.
No,
listen.
the reason why I call you a
No.
liar because you have
No.
lied
No.
repeatedly on
No.
social media
Then we can't
against
talk.
Muslims.
Then we can't
You
talk.
peddle active
Then we
hate.
can't talk.
Okay.
Now you're just shouting again.
Okay.
You've got to remember your manners, otherwise
Right.
we can't talk.
Okay, let's
Number
talk.
3. Last time you guys joined for our protest, which is fine, you defaced the Indian embassy building. I went there.
Did any of you do that?
No.
Okay.
Did it happen? Did it happen?
When you say you, what do you mean?
I meant.
What, Muslims or these individuals? We're talking.
meant-
We're talking with
No,
manners.
you're not
Thank you. Thank you.
listening.
Yes,
You're
we're
not
listening.
listening.
We're listening. We're listening.
There was a protest. Whoever was there.
You said you,
Faced.
Katie.
Hey,
You. Yeah.
Last time there was a protest.
You used the word you.
Okay.
When you said you.
Let's see this out first. Go on.
Okay.
Last time you protested, the embassy was defaced, and all I am saying is, why would you be that
We condemn that. Do we condemn that? Yes. We
So
condemn
can you
that.
tell me-
We condemn that.
Okay, great,
Okay.
great,
So
we're getting
Katie,
somewhere.
today,
Now tell me-
today.
no, tell me
Yeah,
something else.
yes.
Can you guarantee me that today the Indian embassy will not be defaced? Can we guarantee that, please? Can we guarantee
Who
that
are
for
you
me?
asking? All these
I'm
individuals?
asking anybody that's protesting
Okay.
today.
Then
I'm asking
in
you.
that case,
I'm asking.
then in that case, let me respond to you. You should go to the leadership here and talk to
can't
them.
get there.
Okay. Okay.
Take me to
Yeah,
them and
okay.
I'll go.
Okay.
But I look at it,
Okay.
how can
They
I
would be
get
happy
there?
to talk to you, Katie.
Right.
Okay. Let me respond now. They would be happy to talk to you if they knew you as an impartial sympathizer of
I'm
the
not-
Kashmiri people.
I-
But what they do know about Katie Hopkins, this one, what they knew, what I'm very careful. What they do know about you is that you are an established,
No.
well-paid Islamophobe who peddles hate against Muslims, who peddles hate against innocent Muslims around the world. Because of you, there are Muslim women being attacked around the world, not only in Britain, around the world. You are responsible for all these atrocities against Muslim women in the West, in the West. And now you're not going to talk to me, are you? No?
I'm trying to have a
Okay,
chat with you, but
so
you've
let's
gone off on
respond to my points.
Where are all the ladies? Is there a lady?
So this is why, ladies and gentlemen, we call this person an Islamophobe. Are we going to have a conversation?
I'm not an Islamophobe. All I'm asking you,
Okay.
you need to do your march.
Okay. Do you want me to pull some of your articles out right now? Do you want me to read your statements to you?
No, you can do what you want. I'm asking.
you just said-
I asked you something, and I still haven't got an answer.
Which is what?
Can we guarantee today the Indian embassy? I've already been there.
You know,
I'm not your darling.
we haven't done that. We haven't done that. So you
No,
asking
but
us?
can we guarantee?
Yeah, but we haven't. I guarantee no one else.
None of us.
I'm just asking.
None of
Can
us.
we hope that?
Listen,
Can we hope
listen,
for that?
listen. Wait. Let me explain something to you. Let me speak some.
Why is it always
If there is a crowd of 1,000 people,
Why can't
in
we
that
speak?
1,000 people crowd, in that crowd, if there are 5 nutters who end up doing things
Then you should take
against the wishes of 1,000 people,
Then you should
how
sort
can we
that out.
guarantee? Just like white
Don't
supremacists.
shout. You don't need to shout.
Okay, I'm not
just here.
shouting.
See,
I'm
we
not
don't
shouting.
hate- we
Wait,
don't
wait.
hate India.
Okay,
We don't
okay.
hate
Can
India.
you guarantee? Can you guarantee, Katie? Can you guarantee that no white racist supremacist people who are inspired by you directly
No, they're
are
not
not going to
inspired by
walk
me.
into mosques and gun down
They're not
innocent
inspired
Muslims?
by me.
Can you guarantee that?
That's
Can you answer my question?
They're not
Can-
inspired by me.
They are inspired by your articles.
don't-
Can I
don't
read your
point your finger at
Can
me.
you? I'm not touching you, am I?
but you're pointing your finger
I
at
can
me.
point it to you as
don't
much
need
as
to point.
I'll point again. I'll point again.
Then I won't talk to you.
Okay, no problem. Don't talk
fine.
to me. I'm
Okay,
standing
okay.
here. Okay, but you chose. You chose. No. We will talk to you. Now. No. You chose to come here. You chose to come here, and we're talking. No one is threatening you. No one is threatening you. Everyone is peaceful. Everyone is peaceful.
What did you call me?
Okay. Yes, and Katie Hopkins has received a lot of criticism from various parts of the press and some parts of the British establishment. But one thing you cannot criticize her for, and that is a lack of courage. As people would have seen, the hostility that those gangs of men were subjecting her to, there is no scenario, there is no setting where that would be seen to be a proper manner for bullying one woman on her own. And all she was doing was video filming and talking to people. That hostility, I think, would have really harmed the cause of the marchers. Totally uncalled for. It's almost barbaric in its medieval hatred. Very, very unpleasant.
And now we're also going to show you one other video where an effigy of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is being dragged on the streets and then being stabbed multiple number of times. What is this anger? What has it done to any of you guys? I mean, I'm beyond belief here that an internal matter of India, which has been, open for 70 plus years like a festering wound, has been decidedly, ruled in one way, and it's going to bring one part of the country on par with the rest of the countries as far as the laws are concerned. And why this hostility? None of these people ever lived there. So I'm completely nonplussed at the show of aggression on the effigy of Prime Minister Modi, Satish ji.
It's actually worse than that. We have a space for civil dialogue. We have a mechanism for dealing with disputes. We have a system in this country where people can genuinely express protest. But what was done with Modi ji's effigy, it's really broke most of the boundaries that people operate under and interact with each other with. The delight on the faces of those people who you've just shown when they're stabbing an effigy of Modi ji, if that isn't hatred, toxic hatred, then what is it? And, it's almost like there is a disconnect in recognizing that that is hatred, and it will only manifest itself in ever increasing degrees of violence. It's a worrying thing, but like I said, the fact that the march took place, I'm fairly confident would have harmed their cause much, much more. One thing that march will have shown is that the supporters of Pakistan occupying Kashmir, they will have been broadcast and demonstrated throughout the world as being actually people who are not really in control of their anger and their hatred. I think that will have harmed them more than anything else. Now, the really interesting development that has happened only today is that those 27 European parliamentarians who visited Kashmir and held their press conference today, all of them, without exception, have indicated that they are actually pro the Indian position on what happened in Kashmir, and that they had access to areas of the valley, and that they've interacted with people in the valley, and there is no evidence of those 10,000 women who were gang raped by the Indian army. There is no evidence of the huge human rights abuses which these marchers were alleging. And so all of a sudden, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where the Labour Party has actually been the recipient of propaganda. It didn't bother to fact check anything, right? There was nobody in that whole democratic process who thought, well, hang on a minute, let's just see what's behind here. Is there any evidence? And what they've done is they've made public policy statements, they've passed resolutions on the basis of there existing a human rights crisis in Kashmir initiated by the Indian forces. And yet suddenly parliamentarians from Europe have come out and said, well, actually, we support the India position. Where is that going to leave Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party? You know, one thing in everybody's mind is going to be, can we really trust these people with foreign policy when they don't even bother to fact check things before making these sorts of pronouncements? It's going to be a devastating factor in the election for the Labour Party.
And if that's not enough, we mentioned this in passing in our last hangout. There was this case of washing machine salesman Jim. To know more about this, I'm sure a lot of you have Googled and you kind of know, but we'll just have a quick summary of what has happened and what is happening and what is going to happen. Take it away, Satish ji.
Dear me, it's actually a very uncomfortable and a tragic set of circumstances. There was a time when Keith Vaz was the principal Indian origin parliamentarian. He was on many security committees. He was a minister for Europe, I think, in a former Labour government. So very much the height of his political career. And yesterday, we had the announcement that the committee which oversees parliamentary standards produced and published its report into the Keith Vaz incident, and they were scathing on a degree which nobody has ever seen before. Very critical. They dismissed his claims. They clearly emphasized that they thought much of what his testimony was at best deceitful, intending to conceal, prevaricating. Very, very unpleasant report. And so what has happened is Keith has been suspended. Now this is a 6-month suspension, and a 6-month suspension actually means that that's grounds for what's called a recall. And so if a number of his constituents get together and decide that they're very unhappy with him, they could actually have him removed now from office. But I think this is the beginning of Keith's woes, to be honest. It's, as I said, it's tragic, but the Leicester community, which is his host constituency, have responded with a great deal of dissatisfaction. Again, on social media, it's almost comment after comment berating him. I came across one quite amusing comment. Somebody had said that washing machine Jim moves from the spin cycle and into the rinse cycle, and we're just waiting for Jeremy Corbyn to hang him out to dry now. So as you can see, for a politician of that level to fall to become the butt of so many jokes and such criticism, it's almost, I wouldn't be surprised if it's an irrecoverable situation from which Keith will not return. And so all of a sudden, the largest Hindu community, one of the largest established Indian communities in Leicester, is going to have the opportunity to replace somebody who's been their parliamentarian for many, many decades. It's a new wave. Another interesting aspect is that they passed judgment on the fact that he was procuring drugs. And as a parliamentarian, he was in charge of the select committee, which was regulating the law relating to drugs. And so now I understand that an investigation may be underway into what's actually been happening in the Leicester area on that particular drug scene. So this, I believe, is the beginning. Where it will lead is anybody's guess, but the evidence, there's a trail, and I'm sure it will be followed to its logical conclusion. We may well see a complete sea change in the politics of that whole Leicester area, which is quite important for the Indian Hindu community.
Satish, thanks for that update. And before we go to our next topic, which is the elections coming up on December 12th, I had an interesting conversation with a British Jewish friend that I've known for a long time. And he came to the point straight. He said that if the Conservatives don't come back, I'm selling my property in England and moving on. This is as sharp as it gets. I just felt that I should share this with our audience. I mean, some people are really, really fed up with the Labour Party. And how do you think they're going to, get their act together, Satish ji?
Well, I've been having the same sort of conversation with many of the Indian diaspora here. The conversation that we've been having reviewed the factors which were at play and which required the Indian community to leave Uganda when Idi Amin came into power.
Right.
And the factors which governed the exodus from Kenya of the Indian community. And many of those communities are actually settled in Leicester, of all places. And we are now seeing the same factors rearing their heads, an air of unpleasant hostility, religious-based protests, the need for the community to turn to the authorities for protection. You know, none of these things have been there in the past, and yet one by one they're all manifesting. And the irony is that the Labour Party formed the Equalities and Human Rights Commission a few governments ago. And now that the Equalities and Human Rights Commission is engaged in an anti-Semitism inquiry, a formal inquiry into the Labour Party and its own affairs. So the Jewish community are possibly one or two steps ahead of us in this. The evidence that we're seeing almost now on a weekly basis is that, yes, the same party which has been found to be anti-Semitic is also anti-India, anti-Modi, and definitely Hindu-phobic now. It's only a question of time before the evidence is collated and presented to the EHRC. Now, this will be a devastating blow to the Labour Party, especially when elections are only 6 weeks away. So there is an awful lot of pressure. It's almost as though a lot of chickens are coming home to roost in a very short time period. It's been published very recently that the Labour Party are hemorrhaging members and their revenues are diminishing at a phenomenal rate. There is a suspicion that they may even run out of money before the election date itself. So it does seem as though a lot of their past misdemeanors are now all catching up and are going to create a very difficult time. It's a tragedy because we desperately need a second significant party in this country. We have an adversarial political system. And so the tension between the two opposing forces tends to keep everything moving in a fairly central, mid-range, reasonable scope of policies. And if we have the same situation that we have in India, that the Congress party has been decimated and virtually sidelined, we have the same situation arising here with Labour being decimated and sidelined and abandoned by its core voters, then we're going to see very skewed politics in this country. So it'll be sad to see, but it's almost as though this is a destiny that they brought upon themselves.
Well, that's very unfortunate. So in summary, if Jeremy Corbyn were to step down and try to infuse new blood in the leadership of the Labour Party, who, in your opinion, would be the best suited to heal the wounds and take the party forward?
Well, this is a question that a lot of commentators have been looking at and asking, but that's not going to happen. You see, Jeremy Corbyn has got ground level grassroots support from core, very harsh left-wing extreme organizations such as Momentum. Some of the larger unions are very, very determinedly socialist, and they give support to probably the top 3 most prominent members in the Labour Party. And so even if Jeremy Corbyn were to step down, John McDonnell is there, and he's also from the same stable and the same ideology. Some say he's actually even more extreme than Jeremy Corbyn is. And so this extreme element of the left wing, it's almost as though it's permeated the infrastructure with which new leadership would come to the surface. And there may well be the majority of the Labour movement who are unhappy with what's happening and the way the parties move to the left. But the fact still remains that the infrastructure itself is still controlled by this particular faction. And so whoever comes up is likely to be of a similar flavor, if not quite so intense. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to see Jeremy Corbyn and his cohorts ride this stallion as far as it has legs to run. And it will be at the election that the final verdict is given. One thing we really want to do, though, is we want to encourage all Indians in Great Britain to actually vote. We have one of the lowest percentages in terms of voter turnout in our community. And yet this is one of those elections where the outcome is going to be so impacting upon our own well-being in this country. They have to turn out, they have to vote. If they decide that they can't vote for a party that they're loyal to, then at least they can vote for one of the other parties, but they must vote. We really do need the Indian community in the UK to engage. This is the time for them to step forward.
And let's hope that happens. And thank you very much, Satish Kumar Sharma ji, for sharing your thoughts. We'll be back with more unfolding events from Great Britain. Thank you once again.
It's a pleasure as always, Aji, and speak with you very soon, hopefully, with even more developments on this crazy election and the Brexit issue that's still with us. So
Yes.
hope to speak with you soon. Pranam.
Namaskar. Bye.